The wind howled like a wounded beast outside. Ethan Brooks' porch, slamming into the wooden frame of his aging home with a fury that had grown all evening. Salt stung the air, carried from the crashing waves less than a mile away, and the pine trees in the distance creaked under the weight of snow-laced gusts. He stood beneath a flickering porch light, arms crossed, his breath fogging the space around his face. Inside, the soft hum of Lily's voice drifted through the walls as she played with her paper rockets, her imagination unbroken by the reality they lived in. He had promised her the stars once, before life buried him in debt and grief. Since her mother passed, Ethan had become many things: mechanic, cook, protector, but never whole. Tonight felt heavier than most. The storm carried something unfamiliar, something thick with knees. Then came the sound. A thunderous roar tore through the wind, jarring, metallic, unnatural. He snapped his head toward the woods. A light flared briefly beyond the tree line, then vanished. A sickening silence followed, one that twisted in his gut like a warning. He didn't think. He ran. Through ice-coated ground and screaming wind, he pushed into the forest. Branches clawed at his jacket, but he didn't stop. The smell of burning fuel hit him first, sharp and bitter. Then, through the trees, he saw it: twisted metal, shattered wings, and smoke rising like a ghost into the night sky. Inside the wreckage, a figure moved barely. A woman, face bloodied, clutched a silver locket as her eyes fluttered shut. Ethan stumbled forward, heart pounding. Who was she? What was she running from? What happened next will shock you. Ethan didn't hesitate. The cold bit into his skin, snow already soaking through his jeans as he crouched beside the crumpled fuselage. Steam and smoke coiled in the freezing air. But the fire hadn't caught, just metal twisted like ribbon and glass shattered across the snow. He reached into the cockpit where the woman lay slumped, her breathing shallow, a crimson line trailing down her temple. Her fingers clutched a small silver locket, knuckles white as if the object held her entire world. "Hey," he said, voice low and urgent. "You're all right. I've got you." No response. Just a soft groan as her eyes barely opened. He wrapped his arms around her with practiced care, shielding her from the wind as he lifted her free. She was lighter than expected, frail almost. Yet something about her grip on that locket told him she wasn't easily broken. With each step through the woods he fought the elements, his boots slipping, his back straining. Snow fell harder, reducing visibility to barely a few feet, but he could hear the waves now. He was close. His home emerged through the veil of snow, a single-story structure pressed close to the coastline, its windows glowing faintly. Lily's silhouette appeared behind the curtains, her small hand pressed to the glass. The porch light flickered, battered by the wind. Ethan pushed through the door with his shoulder, bringing the stranger into the warmth. Lily gasped from behind the sofa, eyes wide. "Dad, everything's fine, baby," he said, breath ragged. "Go grab that blue blanket from the hall." The living room bore the marks of a home built from quiet struggle, wood-paneled walls faded by time, an old brick fireplace flickering weakly, and shelves of mismatched books and tools. The air smelled of brewed coffee and pine-scented wood smoke, soft and comforting. The woman shivered violently in his arms, her jacket soaked and torn. He laid her gently on the worn couch, brushing ice crystals from her forehead. Lily returned, dragging the blanket, her eyes never leaving the woman. "Is she going to die?" "No, sweetheart, but she's hurt." He wrapped the blanket around the pilot, then fetched the first aid kit from under the sink. The metal tin rattled as he opened it, pulling out gauze and antiseptic. As he cleaned the wound on her forehead, she winced, eyes fluttering. "She needs a doctor," Lily said, voice soft. "I know," Ethan replied, wiping dried blood carefully. "But the roads are blocked, phones too." As if in response, the wind outside howled louder, rattling the windows. The storm had them trapped. The woman stirred again, lips parting slightly. Her voice came out hoarse, barely above a whisper. Where am I?" "You're safe," Ethan said, glancing at her. "There was a crash. I pulled you out." Her gaze flicked between him and Lily, confusion clouding her expression. She touched the locket still clutched in her palm. The plane. Did anyone else? No one else was there, he said gently. Just you. She fell silent, hand tightening around the necklace. Her breathing evened out, though her eyes darted around, calculating. I'm Lily, the little girl said suddenly, stepping forward. What's your name? The woman blinked, clearly unready for questions. She hesitated, then murmured, Sarah. That's pretty. Lily smiled. Were you flying? Like a real pilot? Sarah didn't answer immediately. She looked away, focusing on the fireplace. The flames reflected in her eyes, dancing shadows masking what emotion hid beneath. Lily inched closer. I want to be an astronaut. Dad says I can go to space if I work hard. Ethan looked over, half amused, half aching. His daughter's belief in dreams hadn't faded. Not even now. Sarah let out a dry cough and leaned back. That's a big dream, but I made rockets. Lily beamed, racing to the corner where her paper creations were stacked. Wanna see? No. Lily. Ethan began, but Sarah held up a hand. It's okay. Lily returned with a handful of carefully folded rockets, each colored with stars, planets, and moon craters. Sarah reached for one, fingers trembling. Her thumb brushed across the nose cone slowly, a shadow of recognition passing over her face. You ever fly into a storm before? Lily asked. Sarah nodded faintly. More times than I should have. Ethan noticed the shift. Her voice had strength now, just a trace, and her grip on the locket had relaxed. He fetched a mug and poured steaming coffee, sliding it onto the table beside her. Might help warm you up. Thanks, she muttered, not yet reaching for it. Outside, wind continued to batter the house, but in the room something softened. The fire cracked louder. Ethan sat across from her, elbows on his knees. You were flying pretty low. Storm like this you could have been killed. Sarah didn't answer. She stared into the flames like they held answers she wasn't ready to share. I should recheck the radio, Ethan muttered, rising. As he stepped into the kitchen, Lily stayed behind, sitting cross-legged on the floor near Sarah. You look sad. Sarah exhaled, her head leaning back on the couch. You're a sincere little girl. Dad says sad people have stories. Do you? Sarah smiled weakly. Maybe. You can tell us. We won't tell anyone. Ethan returned moments later, shaking his head. Still nothing. Towers out. Roads are blocked. We're snowed in till morning. Sarah looked up, not surprised. Didn't plan to crash here. I figured, he replied. There was a quiet pause between them. Nothing awkward, just space filled with flickering firelight, and Lily humming softly as she built another rocket. Sarah leaned forward, reached for the coffee, finally took a sip. She closed her eyes as warmth spread through her. You don't have to explain anything tonight, Ethan said gently. We'll figure it out later. Right now, rest. Sarah nodded once. Thanks for coming out there. Didn't feel like I had much choice. But you did. Ethan smiled faintly. Yeah, maybe. From the other room, the storm raged louder, but inside their tiny home, something else stirred, something less violent, more human. Lily laid her final rocket near Sarah's feet. This one's called Starlight Commander. Sarah chuckled softly. That's quite the name. She's the fastest ship in the galaxy. Lily grinned. Maybe you can fly it when you feel better. Sarah's lips parted slightly, as if a laugh tried to escape, but stayed lodged in the back of her throat. She leaned her head back once more, eyes drifting. Ethan stood, overseeing her. Whatever had brought her here, it wasn't just a storm. She had shadows clinging to her, and that locket, whatever story it held, wasn't ready to be told. Still in this moment, surrounded by cracked walls, mismatched blankets, and a child's endless belief, a fragile trust had begun. Have you ever helped someone when you didn't have to? Share your story in the comments. The morning crawled in without sunlight, only thick, lingering fog, curling between pine trees and drifting over the shore like breath from a tired giant. Ethan stood at the kitchen sink, mug warm in his palms, eyes locked on the gray sheet outside the window. The ocean wasn't visible, but he could hear it. Waves crashing against frozen sand in a rhythm older than time. Somewhere beyond that fog was the twisted wreckage of a small aircraft, already half buried beneath fresh snow. Behind him the old floor creaked as Sarah stirred. She sat up slowly on the couch, one hand instinctively finding the locket still hanging around her neck. Ethan turned slightly, watching from the corner of his eye. "You didn't sleep much," he said softly. Sarah rubbed her temples. "Didn't mean to doze at all. You needed it." "I'm fine." He said nothing, sipping from his mug. She glanced toward Lily's room. The door cracked open just enough to reveal crayon drawings taped to the wall. "She's kind," Sarah said, voice quieter than before. "Too kind sometimes," Ethan replied, a shadow of a smile flickering across his face. "She gets that from her mother." Sarah didn't ask, but Ethan stepped closer, pulling a weathered photo from his wallet, one corner frayed. He placed it gently on the coffee table. A young woman with a telescope stood beside Ethan, their arms wrapped around each other, stars behind them barely visible in the printed background. "She used to watch the sky every night," said the stars helped her breathe. Sarah studied the photo without touching it. "Her name was Dana," Ethan continued. "Lily remembers flashes, mostly bedtime stories about galaxies and rocket ships." Sarah nodded, but her gaze drifted back to the window, shoulders tensing again. Ethan noticed. "You don't have to share anything," he said, returning the photo to his wallet. "Not unless you want to." A moment passed in silence. Sarah shifted the blanket tighter around herself and leaned. "That locket," she said finally, her fingers closing around it, "belonged to someone important." He didn't push. The fire crackled faintly, the only sound filling the room beyond the distant moan of coastal wind, sneaking through cracks in the frame. Outside, fog moved like ghosts between trees. "I fixed up the radio last night," Ethan said, changing the subject gently. "Might catch a signal soon. Power's flaky, but if the tower reboots, maybe we'll know what the storm knocked out." Sarah's posture stiffened just slightly. "He didn't miss it. You expecting someone to be looking for you?" he asked, tone casual but deliberate. "No," she replied too quickly. "Just curious." Lily stepped out of her room, rubbing her eyes, dragging a blanket behind her like a cape. "Is she staying today too?" Ethan nodded. "Storm's still rough. Roads are probably a mess." "Yay," Lily whispered, then wandered into the kitchen, grabbing a spoon and tapping it against the cereal box. Sarah watched her, expression unreadable. "Did she ever talk about wanting to fly?" "All the time," Ethan replied. "Last week she asked if she could build a rocket out of spare parts in the garage." "Could she?" Sarah asked, one brow rising. "If I let her, probably." They both chuckled, barely, and Sarah's shoulders seemed to drop a little. She turned toward the window again, eyes narrowing. "That lighthouse, it still works." "Beacon's automated now," Ethan said. "Fog triggers it. You'll see it blink across the trees at night. Useful, I guess. It saved a lot of boats before GPS came around." "I used to love lighthouses," she muttered, not realizing she'd said it aloud. Ethan noticed her distant tone. "Used to?" Sarah didn't answer. Her fingers grazed the locket again. It dangled briefly in the light, revealing a tiny engraving. A faint static noise crackled from the far end of the room. Ethan turned, crossing to the radio mounted on the shelf near the pantry. He adjusted the dial carefully. "Update from Coastal Search Operations." Sarah's eyes locked onto the radio. "Storm impact zones include Barnegat, Cape May, and outlying areas. Officials continue search for missing experimental aircraft, registered under Mitchell Aerospace Technologies." The name hit the room like a dropped plate. Ethan turned, expression shifting. Sarah didn't speak. Her lips parted, then closed again. He faced her fully now. "That's you, isn't it?" She stood slowly, hands still on the blanket. "You should turn that off." "You lied." "I didn't lie," she said firmly. "I just didn't explain." "Mitchell Aerospace, that's military-grade tech. What were you flying?" Sarah stepped back from the couch, jaw tight. "I'm not a threat. You crashed in the middle of a storm, said nothing, and now the radio says you're flying experimental hardware registered to a defense contract." You think that doesn't raise questions? Lily peeked out from behind the kitchen counter. Daddy, Ethan held up a hand. It's okay, sweetie, go grab your sketch pad. She disappeared again. Sarah exhaled, then sank onto the chair near the bookshelf. I didn't choose that flight. I didn't know the weather would turn that fast. I was trying to get clear of everything. Ethan's eyes narrowed. Clear of what? Her voice faltered. Mistakes. He remained quiet, watching her. I wasn't trying to disappear, she said, voice cracking. Just breathe. The tension thinned, just slightly, like morning fog lifting an inch from the ground. Ethan rubbed the back of his neck. You're lucky I found you. I know, you're not telling me everything. I will, she promised. But not yet. Lily returned, clutching her pad and a fistful of colored pencils. Can we draw rockets again? Sarah looked at her, something behind her expression flickering. Sure. As Lily settled by the fireplace, sketching with quiet determination, Ethan stood in the hallway for a moment, watching both of them. Something deeper was unfolding, something not yet named. Outside, the lighthouse beam finally cut through the fog, a soft pulse brushing across the distant tree line, briefly illuminating the edges of their world. Rain tapped softly against the windows, a steady rhythm broken only by the occasional growl of distant thunder. Inside, the fire still burned, casting warm shadows that danced across the walls. Lily sat cross-legged on the rug, a small pile of folded paper beside her, her brow furrowed in concentration, as she added final touches to a fresh creation, colored in bold blues and silvers. Sarah watched from the couch, her legs curled beneath her, blanket wrapped loosely around her shoulders. She seemed better, less pale, more present. The bruises across her cheek had faded slightly, but something deeper still lingered behind her eyes. "Wanna see my fleet?" Lily asked, holding up her latest rocket. Sarah tilted her head. "Your what?" "My fleet. These are my ships." She gestured proudly at the spread. "This one's Star Chaser, and that one's Moon Dancer. I made Comet Blade when I was sick last year. That one flies the fastest." Sarah leaned forward, reaching for the smallest rocket, delicately painted with stars. "You made all these?" Lily nodded. "I want to go to space one day. Not pretend space, real space." Sarah ran her thumb along the fold. "They're amazing. Thanks." Lily beamed. "Do you like space?" Sarah hesitated. Ethan, sitting silently on the recliner with a cup of tea, glanced up. "I used to," Sarah replied finally. "Once. You don't anymore." "I don't know. I stopped thinking about it." "Why?" Lily's voice was innocent, unfiltered. Sarah didn't answer right away. Instead, she picked up Comet Blade, studying its sharp wings. "I flew jets for a long time, planes that most people only dream of. I chased clouds, raced lightning, crossed oceans in silence." Lily's mouth opened slightly. "So you were a pilot?" Sarah nodded slowly. "Then you have been to space," Lily said, wide-eyed. "Almost. Right." Sarah chuckled softly. "Close, maybe." Ethan watched the exchange quietly. The guarded woman from yesterday had shifted. Her voice held wonder, almost nostalgia. "It wasn't much, but it was real. You can help me build better ones," Lily offered, nudging her creations closer. "I use tape, but sometimes Dad helps with glue. Maybe you can teach me flying stuff too." Sarah's mouth lifted at one corner. "Flying stuff, huh?" "Yeah. What makes things lift off? What keeps them from flipping?" "I draw wings, but sometimes they fall sideways." "You already know more than you think," Sarah said, settling cross-legged across from her. "The shape matters. So do angles, balance, and center of gravity." "What's that?" Sarah reached for one of the rockets, gently folding the tip. "Think of it like the heart of the ship. Everything has to work around that." "Cool." Ethan stood and stepped into the kitchen, pretending to refill his mug. In truth, he just needed a breath. Something was changing. Sarah's walls had cracks now, not open, but no longer sealed. When he returned, Lily had dragged out a stack of sketch pads. "This one has boosters. I don't know how to draw fire, so it looks like spaghetti." Sarah smiled genuinely for the first time. "I think it's perfect." Lily beamed and flipped to another page. "This is me on Mars. You gave yourself green boots." "Yup. Moon mud." I think I would have liked being a kid here, Sarah murmured. Ethan leaned against the doorway, arms crossed. Still time. Their eyes met briefly. Something unspoken passed between them. Not romance, not yet, but recognition. Lily held up a final page. This one's empty. I saved it in case I met someone who wanted to draw their dream too. Sarah looked at the page, blank and waiting. Her hand hovered above it, fingers twitching. Not today, she whispered. Okay, Lily said, already moving to the next idea. You want to help me name a ship? Sarah nodded. Sure. The moment stretched peacefully until a sharp buzz echoed through the room. Sarah stiffened. Ethan followed the sound. Her jacket pocket. A phone vibrated once. Then again. Sarah rose, pulling the device free. The screen glowed faintly, displaying an unlisted number. She stared at it, unmoving. You okay? Ethan asked. She didn't reply. Instead, she stepped toward the front door, phone still vibrating in her grip. Where are you going? Lily called. Just outside for a second, Sarah said quickly, voice thin. Rain picked up again, thudding against the porch roof. She slipped through the door and closed it behind her. Ethan crossed to the window, watching her silhouette retreat beneath the eaves. She raised the phone to her ear. Her back remained to him. Still, too still. Lily looked up. Who's calling her? Ethan didn't answer. Something in his chest tight. Outside, Sarah didn't move for nearly a minute. Then her hand lowered, and she slowly turned, eyes scanning the tree line as if expecting something or someone. When she came back inside, her expression was unreadable. You all right? Ethan asked. She nodded too quickly. Wrong number. Ethan didn't press, but the silence that followed spoke louder than any explanation. Later, after Lily had gone to bed, and the fire burned low, Sarah remained seated near the hearth, eyes fixed on the fading embers. Ethan approached, sitting beside her. You don't have to carry everything alone, he said. I've been doing it a long time. Well, he said quietly, maybe it's time you didn't. She glanced at him. You don't even know who I am. Maybe not, Ethan replied, but I'm starting to see who you were, and maybe who you could be again. She didn't respond, but her hand slowly reached across the carpet, picking up the blank page Lily had offered earlier. She didn't draw anything, just held it, as if waiting for the courage to begin. What's a dream you've held on to since you were a kid? Tell us in the comments. Pine branches swayed violently outside the windows, rain slicing across the glass like thin blades. The storm had settled into a low, constant growl, heavy clouds cloaking the New Jersey sky in a dense gray that seemed to press down on the house. Sarah sat in the corner staring at nothing. Her elbows rested on her knees, and her locket twisted between her fingers. The silence had stretched long since breakfast. Ethan worked quietly at the dining table, tinkering with a broken lamp. Lily hummed softly on the floor nearby, coloring one of her rockets. The room held a strange balance, peaceful yet full of weight. Ethan kept one eye on the storm outside, the other on Sarah, sensing a shift but giving her space. Eventually her voice broke through. It was called Project Equinox. Ethan set the screwdriver down, turning toward her. What was? The program, she said, eyes locked on the floor. The jet I flew wasn't commercial, it was part of a classified aeronautics initiative, government-backed high-risk tech. Lily paused her coloring. Sarah kept going. We were testing vertical ascent capabilities in unstable weather. Everyone said the model wasn't ready. I insisted it could handle turbulence. She drew a shaky breath. I was wrong. Ethan said nothing, only listened. My co-pilot, Mason, was the one in control during final calibration. Wind shear knocked our angle, and I overcorrected. The right wing clipped a radar tower on descent. The words dragged like chains. I blacked out. Woke up in the hospital. He did. Lily's pencil rolled across the floor. Sarah squeezed the locket hard. The media tore it apart. They called me reckless, arrogant. The agency shut down the project. I got pulled from flight status. I tried to fight it, but I gave up. Ethan's voice was low, steady. You didn't run because of the crash. No, she admitted. I ran because I didn't know who I was without the cockpit. If I weren't a pilot, Then what was left? Lily stood slowly, approaching without hesitation. She reached into her sketchbook and tore out a fresh page, a new rocket, drawn in gentle blues with soft gold flames. She handed it to Sarah. "This one's called Hope Walker," she said. Sarah looked at the paper, unsure. "You're not broken," Lily whispered. "You're just lost." Sarah blinked rapidly. She didn't cry. Not yet, but her fingers trembled as she clutched the drawing. Ethan knelt beside her, his voice low. "You don't have to keep disappearing. Not here." She shook her head. "I don't deserve peace." "That's not your call anymore," he said, glancing at Lily. "Seems like someone already gave it to you." They stayed there in silence for a long moment. Three people tethered by grief, by hope, by something unspoken rising between them. Outside, thunder rolled across the coast. Later, Sarah stepped onto the porch alone. The wind had slowed, but clouds still loomed, casting the town in a pale steel hue. The pine trees lining the edge of the woods swayed with tired rhythm. She stood barefoot, watching the horizon, her hair tangled by the breeze. Ethan joined her after a while, handing her a cup of tea. "You always drink coffee," he said, "but tea's good for thinking." Sarah smiled faintly. "Is that what this is? Thinking? Could be grieving. Or starting over." She sipped. "I haven't said that name in 2 years. Mason?" She nodded. "His sister tried to forgive me, said he knew the risks. But that didn't fix anything. Everyone else, well, they didn't see me after. I'm not everyone else." "I know." He leaned on the railing, watching the sky. "When Dana died, I didn't want to fix anything either. Just wanted to sit in the dark and forget she ever existed. But Lily wouldn't let me. She'd ask questions, tell stories, pretend her mother was on Mars." Sarah laughed softly. "Mars, huh? Yeah." She said Dana was building moon houses for aliens. "I would have liked her. I think you already do." They sipped their drinks in silence. The lighthouse blinked through thinning fog, faint but persistent. "You think I'm selfish?" Sarah asked suddenly. "No, I left everything behind. Took that old plane without a plan. I didn't know where I was going, just wanted the noise to stop. Sometimes noise is the only thing keeping us awake." Sarah glanced at him. "You always speak like that? Only when I'm tired." She smiled again, this time with less resist. Inside, Lily taped Hope Walker to the wall beside Starlight Commander. She stepped back, admiring her growing fleet. The storm had quieted to a whisper. Branches tapped against the house. Somewhere far off, gulls called from the shore. Sarah looked at Ethan, then back at the tree line. "Do you think people like me can start again?" "I think they already do. Every time they let someone in." Sarah gripped the locket once more, but it felt lighter now. She stepped back inside, eyes scanning the cozy, imperfect space. Books are stacked unevenly, tools scattered near the fireplace, rockets hanging from every available surface. Lily looked up from her drawings. "Will you help me build a real one someday?" Sarah bent down, placing a hand gently over Lily's. "I'd like that." Ethan watched from the hallway, a quiet smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. He didn't say anything, but for the first time in years, something inside him moved, slowly, cautiously toward healing. The pine trees swayed outside, rain faded into memory. Inside, 3 people faced forward. Snow melted in narrow rivulets along the dirt road leading to Ethan's garage, water carving paths through the muddy earth like veins awakening under skin. The air had shifted, less cruel, more forgiving. Frost clung to the dune grass, but tiny buds peeked from branches in cautious defiance. Spring had not fully arrived, but it had whispered its intent. Sarah stood outside, her jacket half-zipped, hands deep in her pockets. She watched Lily kneel near a puddle, testing paper wings against the breeze. Each failed liftoff ended in laughter. Behind them, Ethan adjusted a rusted wheelbarrow near the workshop, engine parts stacked beside him. A black sedan pulled into the driveway, gravel crunching beneath heavy tires. It wasn't a neighbor's car. Sarah's posture stiffened. Her breath hitched before she even saw the face. The door opened slowly. A tall man stepped out, coat sharp, expression sharper. gray around his temples, eyes that didn't blink enough. Sarah. Ethan looked up, placing the wrench down with deliberate calm. Sarah's voice turned to steel. Logan, you haven't answered a single call. I didn't know I owed you anything. He took a step forward. You vanished. The board is panicking. PR's got theories flying wild. You left an active investigation. I was grounded. There's nothing left for me there. That's not your decision to make. It became mine. Logan noticed Ethan's presence. Friend of yours. Ethan didn't flinch. She's under my roof. That makes her my concern. Is that right? Logan sneered. You realize she's sitting on classified logs, potentially obstructing federal protocols. I'm not obstructing anything, Sarah said. I'm breathing. For the first time in years, Logan scoffed. That locket you keep clinging to won't erase the black box, Sarah. You're a pilot. You know how this ends. I do, she replied, chin raised. But I'm staying. Lily stood now, her voice small but clear. She's teaching me rockets. Logan blinked. Excuse me. Sarah stepped forward, shielding Lily gently. This isn't about legal fallout anymore. This is about whether I choose to drown in it or rise. I choose this. Logan's voice lowered. We both know you won't be left alone forever. Let them come. I'm done running. He stared a moment longer, then adjusted his coat. Don't forget who you were when the sky opened. That version of you mattered. She didn't look away. So does this one. Without another word, Logan returned to his vehicle and drove off, tires spinning wet gravel into the trees. Ethan let out a breath. You all right? Sarah nodded. That was the first time I didn't back down. Felt like it. I don't know if it changes anything. Maybe not yet, but something's different now. Later that evening, Lily spread her sketch pad across the table, fingers stained with graphite and joy. I need help with the wings. Sarah sat beside her, brushing curls from Lily's face. Wings depend on lift and throw. The angle decides direction. The shape decides whether you fall or fly. Lily scribbled excitedly. Can I see a real wing someday? Sarah smiled. We'll build one together. Ethan leaned in from the kitchen. Should I clear out half the garage? Only a quarter, Sarah replied. That weekend, they opened the garage doors. Inside, the old workbench became a makeshift lab, blueprints taped to walls, rulers scattered across shelves, tape rolls hanging from ceiling hooks. Sarah sketched aerodynamic shapes while Lily mimicked them in crayon. Curious neighbors wandered by. First was Mrs. Penner, the baker's widow, who brought muffins and stayed to watch. Then came Carl, the hardware store manager, offering a box of old PVC pipe. By Sunday, the corner of Ethan's lot had transformed into something magical, part playground, part hangar. A group of children arrived, lured by Lily's chatter. Sarah showed them how paper gliders tilted midair. She knelt beside each one, explaining balance with quiet patience. Someone handed her a clipboard. What's this? She asked. Ethan smirked. Sat up list. In case you're starting a class. I'm not a teacher. Could have fooled all of us. She glanced at the growing crowd, eyes softened. For once the weight in her chest didn't crush, it expanded. The town didn't ask for her past. They only watched her rebuild. Evenings came slower now, sunsets spilling amber across rooftops. One night, Sarah stood by the shore as the lighthouse blinked steadily across the dark. Ethan joined her, hands in his coat pockets. Still thinking about Logan? He asked. Not really. Mostly just grateful. For what? For not being chased out. For being reminded. I can give something back. He nodded. You gave my daughter more than equation. You gave her belief. Sarah smiled. She gave that to me first. Were you staying? She didn't hesitate. Yes. Inside, Lily taped a new drawing on the refrigerator. A winged rocket, surrounded by tiny smiling faces. Beneath it she'd written in uneven letters, Sarah's flight school. Have you ever stayed for someone who believed in you? Share belief. Morning sun filtered through the budding trees, scattering gold across the yard where dandelions swayed like little parachutes waiting to lift. The breeze smelled of salt and soil, hints of wild mint from the nearby dunes sneaking into the open garage. Tools clinked against metal, soft laughter bounced between beams, and in the center of it all stood a wooden workbench covered in drawings, wires, and dreams. Sarah held a slender aluminum frame, inspecting the stabilizers while Lily positioned cardboard fins along the tail. Ethan crouched near the base, adjusting the nozzle casing he'd carved from a salvaged plumbing joint. "Is this gonna fly?" Lily asked, eyes wide behind safety goggles slightly too large. Sarah grinned. "With enough thrust and balance? It won't just fly, it'll dance." Lily giggled and handed her a strip of reflective tape. "Then make it sparkle too." Ethan wiped sweat from his brow. "Pretty sure the neighbor's mailbox still has a dent from our last test." "Technically," Sarah said, sticking the tape along the side, "that was your prototype." He raised an eyebrow. "It lacked symmetry. I was rushed." Lily looked between them, cheeks puffed with amusement. "You both sound like space people." "We kinda are," Ethan replied, tightening a bolt. "One by heart, the other by habit." Sarah paused. "You think so?" He met her gaze. "I've seen it in you since day one." They worked through the afternoon, layering wires, securing cones, and measuring launch angles. Around them the town seemed to bloom. Beach grass danced in warmer gusts. Wildflowers peeked through sidewalk cracks, and children biked past shouting greetings. Mrs. Penner arrived with lemonade. "Smells like moon fuel in here," she said, setting down a tray. "Rocket fuel," Lily corrected, "but moon's next." They all laughed, even Sarah. Later Ethan stood back, arms folded, surveying their nearly complete project. It wasn't just a rocket anymore. It had a character named Silver Wren, shaped like hope, built with care. "I used to draw wings in the corners of my notebooks," Sarah said, placing the last screw. "Told my mom I'd fly over every ocean before I turned 30. "Did you?" Lily asked. "I came close, but I missed some skies along the way." "You can still reach them," Lily replied confidently. "Just from a different ground." Sarah smiled, something in her chest pulling tight and relaxing, as if Lily's words rearranged a few lost pieces. Ethan leaned against the doorway. "When I was your age," he said, pointing to Lily, "I built a glider out of plywood and fishing line. It soared 6 feet, then collapsed." Sarah chuckled. "Sounds promising." Promise was never the issue. Execution was. "You mean gravity?" Lily asked. "Exactly." They marked a date on the calendar, Rocket Day, and posted flyers across the diner, library, and hardware store. "Build, launch, dream," the paper read beneath hand-drawn stars and a cartoon rocket. The week leading up to it buzzed with quiet excitement. Parents stopped Sarah at the grocery store, asking about safety. Kids brought sketches to the garage after school, trading crayons for soldering irons under supervision. Ethan fixed up launch pads using repurposed hinges. Sarah labeled parts in Sharpie and Lily color-coded glue caps. They played music on old speakers, mostly classic rock, sometimes Lily space songs. Sarah found herself laughing more, not fake or polite, real. One evening, Lily handed her a folded sheet. "I drew us," she said. Sarah opened it, crayon figures, 3 people standing beside a rocket, stars above, heart between. "That's you," Lily pointed. "You're holding the remote." Sarah looked at the drawing, then at the girl, overwhelmed by how right it felt. "I always thought family was something you were born into," she whispered. "Maybe it's something you help build too." Lily nodded like it was the most straightforward truth. Like a rocket. Launch day dawned bright. The sky was clear, no wind. Rows of lawn chairs lined the edge of the dunes. A folding table held rockets of every size, some made of soda bottles, others shaped from cereal boxes. Excited voices filled the air, children bouncing in anticipation. Sarah wore her old flight jacket, with faded patches and sleeves too loose. Ethan adjusted the microphone at the edge of the sandlot. "Welcome to Cape Haven's first annual Rocket Day," he announced. "Built by small hands, guided by big hearts." Applause rang out. Lily stepped up next. "Our rockets are made with paper, glue, dreams, and science. We hope they fly high, and if they don't, we'll build better ones." Cheers rose like thunder. One by one, rockets launched. Some fizzled, a few soared, One spiraled into a bush, scattering confetti. Laughter followed every lift. Then came Silver Wren. Lily stood beside Sarah, fingers on the remote. Ready? Sarah gave a firm nod. Ignite. With a hiss and sudden burst, the rocket lifted into the sky, spinning through beams of sunlight, silver glinting as it rose. Everyone gasped. It arched high, paused against blue, then fell gracefully, parachute opening with perfect timing. Children ran toward the landing zone, cheering. Sarah's hand lingered over the switch. Ethan reached for her shoulder. "You all right?" She nodded, eyes glistening. "I think I'm exactly where I should be." As the crowd dispersed, Mrs. Penner hugged her gently. "Thank you for reminding us we can still dream." That night, the three of them sat on the porch beneath a velvet sky. Lily dozed between them, her head on Sarah's lap. Ethan leaned closer. "You ever think about starting again, professionally?" "I think this is starting again," Sarah replied, brushing Lily's hair. "Not just for you." She looked at him, their eyes meeting in silence that said more than words. Stars blinked into view, quiet and eternal. They weren't chasing space anymore. They were building something more grounded and just as vast. Sunlight spilled across the sand in long golden streaks as gulls danced overhead, wings outstretched like gliders catching every breath of the sea breeze. Flags tied to driftwood posts fluttered cheerfully beside the launch area, colors snapping against a sky so clear it felt infinite. Children buzzed around the makeshift staging zone, faces lit with anticipation, arms full of paper rockets, foam wings and tape-wrapped boosters. Sarah stood in the center of it all, clipboard in one hand, a pencil behind her ear. Her hair was pulled into a loose braid, and her flight jacket was draped proudly over her shoulders. Every few moments, she knelt beside a group of kids, checking designs, offering suggestions, and more often than not, simply listening as they explained their concepts with boundless enthusiasm. Ethan adjusted one of the launch pads with a wrench, glancing over occasionally, his smile quiet and constant. Lily skipped over, cheeks flushed with excitement. "We're almost ready for round 2. Sarah nodded, looking toward the gathered crowd of parents and volunteers lining the dune. Folding chairs sank slightly into soft sand, and picnic blankets were spread beneath wildflower-speckled shrubs nearby. A group of teenagers practiced their countdowns, each voice louder than the last. Miss Penner stood near the refreshment table, passing out lemonade and sandwiches, laughing with a warmth that made everyone feel like family. Ethan moved beside Sarah, offering her a bottle of water. "This is something else." She took it, uncapping slowly. "It's more than I imagined. I've never seen the town like this." Sarah scanned the scene, then exhaled deeply. "Neither have I." They stood together for a moment, watching as another rocket lifted into the air, cutting a silver path across the sky. Cheers followed its graceful arc before it parachuted gently back to the earth. "You did this," Ethan said. Sarah shook her head. "We did." He looked at her, something unspoken rising between them. Like a tide, neither was resisting anymore. "I kept telling myself I was just passing through," she said. "One crash, one detour, and I'd vanish again. But now, I don't want to leave." Ethan didn't answer, but he didn't need to. Nearby, Lily was helping a younger child tape feathers onto their rocket. She glanced over, waving wildly. "We're launching Comet Smile next." Sarah laughed. Did she name every rocket in Cape Haven? At least every good one. Lily ran back and grabbed Sarah's hand. "Come on, we need a judge." Sarah allowed herself to be pulled forward, knees bending to listen to a boy explain his design, shaped like a dragon. As she complimented the balance and creative flair, Ethan remained at a distance, admiring how easily she belonged now, how naturally people had accepted. After the last wave of launches, Sarah called everyone together near the table lined with ribbons, markers, and small trophies shaped like tiny airplanes. "We're not judging who flew highest," she said, voice steady and kind, "or whose rocket had the shiniest wing. Today was about creating something you believed in. That's what real flight is about." Parents clapped, children beamed. Ethan's eyes remained fixed on her. As the crowd thinned, folding chairs disappeared, and laughter turned to soft conversation. A gentle wind brushed the coastline, carrying the scent of salt and fresh grass. Sarah found Ethan near the truck, stacking leftover supplies. "Got room for one more in the garage?" she asked. He turned, surprised. "You thinking about building again already?" "I'm thinking about teaching." He set the box down, interest piqued. "I've had people ask all day," she continued. "Not just kids. Some adults want to learn. Mechanics, lift, angle of descent. I'm thinking, maybe an aviation program. Here, local." Ethan leaned back against the truck. "You serious?" "I am." He crossed his arms. "You'd run it, design it, guide it, bring in others eventually. But yeah, I'd start it." His voice softened. "I think it would change lives." She shrugged. "It already changed mine." From behind them, Lily bounded over. "Guess what?" "What's up, Command?" Sarah asked. "I decided something." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "Do I need to sit down?" "Nope." Lily took a deep breath. "From now on, you're not just Sarah. You're my co-pilot." Sarah's face stilled for a second, just long enough for Ethan to notice the emotion surface. Her hand reached down, gently squeezing Lily's. "Best assignment I've ever received," she whispered. Lily hugged her tight, then skipped away again, singing something about satin rings and chocolate ice cream. Ethan stepped closer. "She means that." "I know," Sarah said, voice hushed. "And I won't let her down." They stood watching the horizon together as the sun dipped lower, streaking the ocean with amber and rose. "You ready to start something permanent?" Ethan asked. She didn't hesitate. "I already have." Back at the house, Lily taped a new banner across the living room wall. Big letters, wobbly and proud, read, "Cape Haven Flight School coming soon." Sarah laughed when she saw it. "Guess it's official now." Ethan chuckled. "We don't mess around here." The day ended quietly, fireplace crackling, warm tea in hand, rockets resting near the window like trophies from a war they hadn't known they were fighting. Sarah glanced around the room. No fear, no hiding, just peace. What's a moment that made you feel you belonged? Share in the comments. Sunlight danced along the wooden planks of the boardwalk, casting soft patterns across painted benches and freshly planted flower beds that overflowed with tulips, daisies, and bluebells. The air buzzed with the hum of celebration, children laughing, kites soaring, and the familiar scent of ocean salt mingling with birthday cake and grilled corn. Beneath a wide striped canopy, Lily twirled in a silver dress dotted with stars, her arms stretched like wings as her friends cheered her on. A banner arched above the celebration table, hand-lettered and bright, "Happy 8th Orbit." Sarah stood at the edge of the crowd, hands tucked into her denim jacket, eyes scanning the scene. A paper rocket piñata hung from a curved tree branch nearby. Tables were covered with constellation-themed napkins, while toy shuttles rested beside every slice of chocolate cake. She watched as Lily ran up to Ethan, holding 2 balloons in one hand and a cupcake in the other. "Dad," she said, "the next launch is ready." Ethan chuckled and looked toward Sarah. "Is that true, Flight Commander?" Sarah smirked. "Pads cleared, fuel checked. Countdown in T-10. Lily squealed, rushing to gather her crew of friends, each holding their personally decorated cardboard rocket. They followed her toward the designated launch zone near the sandy bluff, where wild grass swayed in soft rhythm. Months had passed since that stormy night. The town had thawed, bloomed and opened its arms. So had Sarah. Her aviation program now meets twice weekly at the community center, a mix of science, sketches, experiments, and stories about flight. Attendance had doubled each month. One of the teens she mentored recently received a scholarship to an engineering academy. The town no longer whispered her name like a secret, they spoke of it like a badge of pride. She turned as Ethan stepped beside her, camera slung over his shoulder. Not a bad turnout for an 8-year-old's liftoff. Sarah nodded, heart steady. She earned every bit of it. He looked at her, face calm, voice low. "So did you." They walked together down the boardwalk toward the launch clearing. The wooden planks creaked beneath their steps, worn but familiar. Locals waved as they passed, Carl, the hardware guy, holding his granddaughter's hand. Mrs. Penner handing out lemonade near a table lined with plastic telescopes. Lily stood proudly at the front, wearing her co-pilot pin, the one Sarah made by hand from an old flight button. She raised her hand. Pilots, are you ready? The group roared back. Sarah flipped a switch on the remote beside her, eyes locked on the small white rocket centered on the platform. 3, 2, 1, ignition. The rocket leapt into the sky, trailing a bright shimmer behind it. Kids screamed joyfully as it arched high, then descended slowly under a striped parachute. Cheers erupted. As the children ran to retrieve it, Lily grabbed Sarah's hand. Did you see that? It flew straight, just like the one we tested last week. I saw it, Sarah said, squeezing gently. You've got good instincts. Lily beamed. Maybe I'll be the one teaching someday. I'm counting on it. Nearby, Ethan leaned against a post, snapping photos, but his focus lingered on them longer than the camera lens did. As the sun dipped lower, painting the sky in shades of orange and lavender, Sarah found a quiet moment near the overlook facing the cliffs. Waves curled along the beach, glittering beneath fading light. Wind ruffled her hair, and distant seabirds flew in perfect formation overhead. Ethan approached, holding 2 mugs of warm cider. He offered her one without a word. Hard to believe how far we've come, she said, watching a seagull dip into the surf. I think about that night often, he admitted. The storm, the wreck, the locket in your hand. Sarah touched her chest. She still wore it, now not as a chain to her past, but a tether to something steadier. I used to think that crash ended everything. Turns out it started something better. Ethan looked down at the sand below. You think this is forever? She turned to him. I stopped asking that question. I wake up now and give everything I've got. Lily came bounding toward them, wind in her hair, frosting on her nose. I told everyone that next year we're building a glider. A real one. Sarah laughed. Ambitious. Dad said he'll help. You too, right? Of course, Sarah said, pulling her close. They watched the sea together, 3 silhouettes woven into the dusk. Later, as candles flickered and music softened, Sarah stood to give a short toast, nervous but grounded. Some dreams are small, others stretch beyond what we think possible, but the best ones, the ones that matter, are the kind we build together. Applause followed, soft and genuine. Sarah stepped down, heart light. The night ended with sparklers and quiet chatter. Children tucked rockets under their arms like trophy. Parents exchanged numbers for next week's flight sessions. Ethan offered to drive supplies home, and Lily rode shotgun, rocket helmet still perched on her head. Sarah strolled behind them, hands in her pockets, a piece she'd never known settling over her shoulders like a second skin. She paused once more at the overlook, gazing at the sky. Stars blinked into view, steady, unwavering. She whispered, not to anyone in particular, thank you for the storm, then turned, following her family home. Where are you watching from? Please tell us your city and country in the comments, and subscribe to join our family of dreamers. Tap the bell never to miss a story of hope and love.